All right, so this video we are going to add the plunger, and yet again I'm just going to grab a color sprite out of here. Let's go ahead and set the texture in there, plunger, and can you imagine what the custom class name will be? You guessed it, plunger. And then finally, for name, let's just go ahead and give it a name of plunger. All right. Got to give it a physics body, of course. You could get away with an alpha mass because it actually is a kind of continuous springy shape. But I'm going to go with something a little simpler, just bounding rectangle, and I'm going to take off all those options right there, move this guy into place. I do want to kind of zoom in just a little bit and make sure, there it is, that the plunger his body is right between the two sides of the wall. I wouldn't want it colliding, doing something like that, because the plunger is going to remember its initial position and always go back to that. So now that it's in there, let's go ahead and we might as well start our ball off actually in the plunger lane, the gutter. Oops, I grabbed the plunger there, didn't I? Main ball, that's what I'm looking for. All right, and let's move this guy over to there. Okay, we'll give it a kind of nice long drop into the plunger. And let's take a look at the properties before we build this. So I'm going to go over here to the tables property list, and yet again I'm inside of the kind of the demo table here that we're using for this example, but it's the same properties that are inside of the official demo table, table 1. And under plungers, you've got, you guessed it, an entry in here named plunger. Of course, that entry should match exactly what you named it over here. And yet again, there we go, the wall's getting in the way of me selecting it, plunger. So when this builds, the kit is going to know, hey, there's that plunger that we referenced in the property list. I found one in the scene with that same name. Now, the plungers is kind of a funny one because if you didn't include a custom name or an entry in the property list, it's just going to use its kind of generic default values in there, and it's still going to plunge. Okay, so if you press down on the screen and let go, or if you're using an external game controller and press the A button, it's going to do all of those things. The advantage here of giving it this name and matching it to one of our entries inside of the plungers dictionary is that we can put in some custom properties, okay? One of which is the base impulse amount, and what happens is when you pull down on the plunger, it kind of incrementally adds this much or this amount to how much it's going to kick forward on the ball. So if you don't want your plunger to, or if you don't want it to be very effective, you can decrease this number. I would recommend leaving it probably at about this. And then the max to go down, this property sets how far down the plunger is going to go before it ends up just basically releasing itself, or the max it can visually go down. I think actually you can hold it a bit longer, but it's not going to appear to descend down any further. And then the impulse factor, oh, and actually I think I just confused these two. The base impulse amount is the amount that it starts with. Impulse factor is the amount that gets added up incrementally over time. So so again, if you want to give it a little bit more kick, you can knock that up a little bit. It's this is probably the one setting that you would want to change based on basically the mass of the plunger. So for example, if you had something, let's say that this color sprite over here is going to be our alternate plunger. Okay, so I'm going to make it kind of bigger, and it's as such, since it's a bigger object, I mean, it's got a different mass. All this kind of gets factored into how things collide with each other in the physics world. So it's this shape would probably require a little bit more of an impulse factor because it's a bigger shape to kind of kick forward up into the ball. So if you are going to have a plunger that's vastly different in size or shape as the one that we're using, toy around with that impulse factor. And one indication that your impulse factor is not set up perfectly is if you ever try to plunge and the ball just kind of sinks down through it or something like that, then tinker with that particular property. But what we've got right now should plunge just fine. So let's go ahead and build this. And as usual, I always want to remind you that the simulator is not a great test environment. It's nothing compared to the speed of your actual device. Don't think that your computer is harnessing all of its power and putting it toward the forward engines of the simulator to give you the most accurate simulation possible. That is just simply not the case. We're probably looking at 30 frames per second, whereas your phone, your iPad, your Apple TV, they're going to run that at 60 frames per second. So anyway, I'm pulling down right now on the pseudo iPhone. I'll let go of it, and voila, it shoots off. And you saw the plunger probably go a little bit further than it should have. Again, that's a simulation issue. Okay, it's just not reliable. It's not what you're going to get on your actual device, but it is certainly working. And you can, with enough pull down on it, you can get it out of the plunger lane and into the actual world of the pinball table. Other plunger-related properties, let me fold these back down and talk about them. Let's go back over here to our tables. Because you could potentially have more than one plunger, but they're all going to work at once. What I've done is I've put the sounds for the plunger just into the kind of the main sounds dictionary over here. This way you don't kind of overdo it with various plunger sounds. So here is the array for the plunger launch, and you can see you can have multiple plunger sounds that get picked randomly. So again, this is an array. It's just going to pick out one of these potential sounds to play for the plunger launch. And then you'll notice too, back over here, under plungers, under this plunger, we've got adds to goal, and you can set up goals, which are essentially just any string of events that you want to occur when the plunger is released. And this too can be an array. In this case, though, if this is an array, what happens? Let me just go ahead and add in an entry here. Everything is going to occur that you put inside of here. All right, it's not going to pick out one of these at random. So you can make more than one goal happen at once for a particular event. And this doing what I have right here, setting up an array with just one item, is exactly the same as if you just had this set as string and then just put in here plunge. And if you did want to look at the goals for whatever this is for plunge, and this can be anything that you want it to be, unfold your goals. And of course, in our little demo table where we took everything out, these none of these are really going to run, but they safely can be included in here and do nothing. What's going on is it's the plunge goal is saying it's achieved at 1, which just means that if you do it once, you've basically achieved that particular goal. But it's also resetting itself, so this goal can run again. So every time you plunge, it's going to achieve itself and then reset itself back down to 0. And then it's going to play an animation. And every one of your lights can have up to 8 animations. So these are kind of built into the lights, and you set them up over here, and we'll talk about that later. But you can see that what's going on here is the goal, once achieved, is going to play animation 1 on these particular objects or lights. And you just define which lights you want to play animation 1 for. And each one of these decoration lights defines its own animation properties. And again, you can put in here up to 8 animations, and each one of these play animation arrays can define multiple objects. I know it sounds a little complex now, but once we start talking about our lights, it'll make a lot more sense. But it's doing things like that you can set up. You can basically trigger the entire table to light up. You could have kind of a fake LCD screen. You could have every one of your bumper lights light up at once. So there's some really cool things you can do. And obviously the reason I set up a goal for plunging is because a typical thing that a pinball table will do is when the game starts or the ball goes back into the plunger, a lot does actually happen. That's kind of its weird purge chance to light up everything, kind of show you how cool that table is. So back over here, I think we've actually covered plunging. And by the way, we are of course only testing on the iPhone simulator for these videos. But if you did run this on your actual device, be it iOS or tvOS, if you do have one, you can connect up an external game controller. I'd recommend getting that Nimbus Steel series, the one that Apple recommends on their website, and it's going to function right away. You don't have to toggle anything in the property list. All the external game controller support is built right in, and all you'd have to do is hit the old A button to launch the plunger, and it's going to send it into the game. And of course, all your other buttons are going to work automatically as well. And it's a really cool feature of the kit, because believe me, if you're playing on the TV, it's not as fun to play at the table with the little micro remote, the included Apple TV remote. It is a lot of fun to play it with some actual, little joysticks to move the flippers. So something to think about, right? More to spend. Okay, I'll be back with another video shortly.